Welcome back to another episode of Truth to Power. Today, I'm joined by Zayna Lawrence. She's one of my favorite people to talk to by far. Zayna is a psychology major at USF. She also is managing her own music career. And today, we'll be discussing a few things. Firstly, that trend that's been going around TikTok. That's like, I'm not afraid to admit, as a black person trend. Also, talking about TikTok's ban, talking about some of her psych background, and also some like racialized and culturally based psychological phenomenon. So that being said, Zam, you got anything you want to say before we get started?
No, I'm just happy to be here.
All right, cool. So we can go ahead and get started with the questions then. So, Zayna, what brought you to study psychology?
I think I've always kind of sorry. I became interested in it just because of this idea or what I was seeing in like elementary school and middle school, how in both elementary school and middle school we had like a mental health crisis within our school, like self-harm and things like that. And it was just handled so poorly, so incredibly poorly that I know people that were suffering during that time were scarred. So I've always kind of just been interested in how could that have been handled better. And that kind of brought me to psych and learning about psych and understanding what happens in the brain when people do things like self-harm or depression and other things like that. It was just very interesting to kind of understand what's happening underneath and how that might show on top. So I became very interested in learning psychology. I took AP Psych in high school, which was really, really cool. So I was like, okay, I think this is the major for me. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I remember having to take that, but it was required. Right. I had this plan to like take this easy, it's like chill class. It was like teaching science to like fourth graders, but then like the people was weird at the program. We was like, nah, this ain't it. So I had to fall back, and then I got put in psych. But it was cool. It was definitely like you said, like just learning like what your brain is doing, because like your brain is everything. So like being able to like just understand that, I definitely understand why it's something that's like you're one so passionate about, but then two like eager to learn about too. And I can also see how like you always like think with like a psych perspective, because like when we watch Grey's Anatomy, that's one of our shows, cause, you know. But but like when we watch that, like you always are like, this is why a hospital need like a psychologist or something like that. It's like to see that like you've been thinking about that since like a young age, like really does make sense. So that's cool.
And just to also think about how, like, that was just my personal experience. Just think about, wow, that whole situation in elementary, middle school, that just the self-harm crisis that was happening to our generation in general should have been handled way better than it was, just overall. And just kind of looking at that, and then also thinking about like Black people specifically. If like if it's not being handled well in a grand scheme, imagine how poorly it's being handled for specific communities.
Right.
So just think about that part too.
Yeah. No, that's definitely a big part. Especially like being culturally like sensitive to a certain like demographic when working with this. Like that's like a very big part of it, because obviously like people, they see some type of situation, they might bring in the police, historically knowing that like it's friction between the community or something like that. I think that also start the conversation on like they just need more people to do like what police would be called for type jobs. You know what I mean? Just like different response people who can be there like rapidly and things like that. But I had a question, but I lost it. So yeah, we'll go ahead and start. Oh no, I remember though. So you're taking like an adolescent like development class, right?
Yeah.
And I was just kind of thinking about like, I don't know why, but for some reason just like the pandemic popped in my mind. So like thinking about like development and being 4 years removed from like 2020, people all in the house having like these kind of like different developmental stages or whatever in a weird context. What are some of the things that you kind of, if applicable, that you've like learned about, that you can kind of see on like, dang, that was like a big thing looking back on it?
I mean, I think for sure most socialization happens in your adolescence. So to think about the fact that most of the socializing that we were doing was through a screen, and how much that kind of did for not only just our social skills, but our social skills. Like people say all the time that we don't have really the best social skills, and it's like, well, how can we if we spent the most important part of our socialization development in the house and through screens and so things like that I've noticed. And then also we talk about a lot how like the student and a lot of adolescents like died and just never recovered after COVID. And a lot of it is because like that's when school really becomes fun, like during your adolescence. You're gaining a little bit more independence. You go through like a different stage in finding your identity. So now it's like high exploration, where before it was low exploration. So you have this desire to kind of just go out and see things and try different things. and to be limited and stuck in the house during the time where you're supposed to be out there exploring, making mistakes, and figuring out your identity. I feel like definitely halted people with their identity building. That's why we talk about like even in high school, like high schoolers are still kind of acting like middle schoolers, and college students are still kind of acting like high schoolers because we haven't really progressed the way we were supposed to in terms of finding our identity.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that makes sense. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know about you, but like at a certain point, just like, I feel like COVID like broke you. It was like, dang, like this is really like not normal. Like, I feel like little kids probably would have just been like, dang, like I'm at home. Like, and like older adults probably would have been like freaking out because they got their lives. But like at the end of the day, it's like they probably just want to get off work and chill at the crib anyway. But like with us, like it was like, damn, it'd be like a teenager. And I just got my license. Like, and you just like are trapped. Like, I really do think that was a very, very like different experience.
And I think something else that's important to note is that during your adolescence is when political engagement increases. So also thinking about the political, just the political environment that we were in during that time. Like I know that affected me deeply. Like everything that was going on. Like I'd always been weary of like, you know, racism and police brutality and things like that. But something about 2020 just hit harder because one, it's elevated emotions because you're stuck in the house. That's like one element, right?
It's just right in your face.
Exactly.
That's all you got.
Exactly. And now I'm becoming more politically involved just because of where I'm at in my development. Like, you know, that part of my brain is developing. Now I want to be more politically involved to know what's going on in my community. And for, you know, us specifically, we have that added layer of actually being Black. Right. So, and witnessing history, witnessing really crazy things at such a young age and feeling so powerless because we're in the house.
Yeah, then it was like an election year too, and we couldn't even vote. It was just crazy. I remember doing like a class assignment about it. Like it was some like extra credit for IB Glopo. Right. Like I was like, I can't even vote. It was just crazy. It was just a crazy time. Yeah, but kind of thinking about like forming your identity a little bit in terms of like that stage of development. What are some of the ways that like you have started to embrace like your womanhood and your identity as a Black woman differently? Like as you've gotten older?
I think a major thing for me has always been my hair. I've always, like, in terms of womanhood, how I identify with womanhood and Black womanhood specifically, I know I speak for a lot of Black women when I say that there's a spiritual and emotional connection that we have with our hair. And just growing up and having my mom do my hair and, like, how we've really bonded over that. I have a lot of memories of my mom doing my hair or going to the hair salon and overhearing some grown woman things I'm not supposed to be hearing at like 6, 7 years old. Just things like that. Like, you know, I'm sure you have that same experience thinking about the barbershop, right? So just thinking about things like that and just kind of how, you know, my hair is curly, you know, natural growing up, but then that was being perpetuated to us as beautiful as straight, like flowy hair. So just kind of the dissonance of that. Additionally, me being a minority where I grew up, so it's like not that many people have hair that look like mine. So it's kind of having to really just embrace that self-love. Like my hair is beautiful, and the reason why people are saying it's not is because of things that are out of my control. And then just kind of letting go of what other people think of me and my hair, and letting go of that help me let go of what other people think of me in general in terms of my body, my skin, the way I act. It just kind of all followed how I embrace my womanhood and things like that. So that's kind of what led me to like getting locks, just kind of like feeling free, not really feeling like I have to do much to maintain it or like it has to look a certain way to appease the world. It's just my hair just does whatever it wants. Like it looks a certain way when I first got it done, and now like a year later it looks completely different, and all I did was spray water and wash it. You know what I mean? So
every time.
Yeah, every time. But yeah, just thinking about that, like that's definitely, my hair was definitely a huge tunnel of how I developed my womanhood. I feel like my hair is definitely grown with my womanhood. Yeah.
I like her. Yeah. See, season change, you know, getting a little bit more sun, color change, Pokemon evolving and stuff. But no, so just kind of like speaking about like Black women though. Who's your favorite like Black woman activist or visionary?
Wow. Strangely enough, like this is my favorite person of all time, so it shouldn't be a shock that I'm going to say it to you, but like Billie Holiday. I think what she was able to do with just her music, like we got to understand, this woman pissed off the FBI. Like, do we understand that? Like the FBI had it out for a singer. Like that's crazy. And she continued to perform and spread her message. Her message through her music. Her music was so powerful that the U.S. government was scared of this woman. And said, you know, we got to either put her in the grave or put her behind bars. That's the only thing that we can do.
And what was some of the stuff that, you know, she was saying to the streets? What was she singing in them blues?
So, Strange Fruit is Billie Holiday's song that made her one of the most wanted women in America. And she was just raising awareness about the lynching epidemic that was happening in the South that most people either ignored or were a part of.
Yeah. Emphasis on that part of
right.
Then postcards. No, like that was.
Right.
I can't forget the postcard.
Exactly. So they were either witnesses or a part of it, or just ignored it. And she kind of made it impossible. She sang this song everywhere. It was very clear what the song was about. And music is a universal language, so it spread. So it made people feel like this emotion that was either comforting for them, like felt like someone saw their pain for like the Black community, or made them uncomfortable because they were sitting here facing the pain of another community that they were inflicting on human beings. And that's a very scary feeling for people to realize. When you realize that you are hurting another soul, people's ego will get in the way before they ever admit that. So that was a very uncomfortable feeling for white people, and it scared the U.S. government like crazy. They were scared. So, and she just kept singing. She went to prison, came out, kept singing. And to this day, she's kind of seen as like the godmother of the civil rights movement because, Nina Simone then did a cover of that song during the civil rights movement during the 60s. So yeah, Billie Holiday. That's my answer.
Okay. So I guess we can skip favorite female artist too. Nah. I already knew that though. But so speaking more so about some of these like intersections of race and psychology, what are some like racialized and culturally based psychological phenomena that you have encountered from just like being a psych student?
Yeah, so we've talked about this. The most interesting one that I actually just recently encountered. So we brought up my adolescent development class. So we're talking about like the formation of identity, my last class before spring break. And we learned about this thing called negressence. And I'm blanking on the name of the person.
Go ahead.
I got it. Let's say his name. William Bill Cross did research on this theory of like the stages of negressence, kind of from the beginning somewhat to the end. And what we did in class was we took different celebrities like Beyonce during the formation era, and then Beyonce during the Bootylicious era, for example. And then
can you say what negressence is first?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, y'all good.
Okay.
From the class notes.
Let me pull up my notes. Anyways, negressence is basically the identity formation of African Americans.
Okay.
So basically we have like the identity formation in general. Like we have a general theory, but that general theory received a lot of criticism because it wasn't specific to cultures. So there's quite a few different cultures. Like we learned about an Asian American one as well that have a specific identity framework of how it develops. And negressence is the one that's specifically for African Americans. So you have the pre-encounter, which is basically value majority culture and then may harbor anti-Blackness attitudes. And then next you have the encounter. They may have like a racial event that catches them off guard, that makes them rethink their racial identity. And then they have this motivation to kind of identify themselves within their culture. And then you have the immersion/emersion, which is rejection of a dominant culture and then immersion into Black culture. And then internalization, where you have an integrated sense of identity. And then internalization/commitment is a concern for a Black community as a whole. So that's kind of like the stages that either Black people go through or kind of get stuck in. So when we did this activity, we took, like, this is kind of controversial. We took Tyler Perry, for example, and said, like, he's in the pre-encounter stage because he harbors a lot of anti-Blackness in his work. Or then if you take, like, Malcolm X after prison, then he's definitely in the internalization commitment because of his full commitment to the Black community.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's a cool theory. Just thinking about, I think that's good for just understanding like how us as just a community in the diaspora have different experiences and different places where we stand within like that stage of development or our attitudes towards, just whatever you define the label of Black as being. So like that does a good job at just like contextualizing like the scale of how many different Black spectrums it could be. Because what was that, like how many stages? Like 5, 6?
5 stages.
Yeah, so like if you can have like 5 stages and like at least like 100 different like little in betweens at each one of those, that's like a genuine person who feels that certain way, towards their community. So like I think that does a good job for in terms of like earlier you said being able to understand why certain things are the way they are. Just being able to apply that to like a group. Being as Black folk, and then you can kind of find some, I feel like, peace within one, just like communicating as a culture, because then you can just kind of like better understand where people are coming from, and just like having more empathy for like experiences and things like that. But then also, you can also use it to just kind of like take a step back and be like, it's not like I don't want to say not personal, but at the same time, it's like it's very much so just people are viewing things differently from like a fundamental part of like where they are at in terms of like how they want to view something, or like what their past experiences have amounted to create that outlook that they have. So yeah, that's like I think that's very useful. Like it is a very useful like thing to, I feel like, learn as just like a Black person, you know what I mean? Like every Black person should take like African American psych class.
Absolutely. Like that's what I'm saying. Like psych, just understanding how psychology explains so much, for example, like why psychology may explain aggression or violence, and how that can be treated instead of punished. For example, like we would make it so far. That's why we always advocate for more mental health resources for the unhoused, because you're punishing and criminalizing being unhoused instead of saying, okay, this might be a symptom, a sign of something that needs to be treated, something that can be treated. Instead of looking at the whole person, you're just looking at the behavior of the person, and that's not the whole person. You know what I mean? Right. So definitely think that's why, like, taking psychology and using it to kind of explore the Black community specifically as a Black person is so important. Yeah.
What are some like future goals that you have working within the field of like psychology, social work, things like that? What are some goals on the spot?
On the spot? Okay, so currently more like close goals or close within years goals is I want to get my master's in social work. Just because it's a very flexible graduate degree to have. You can work for the county, you can work in policy, you can work for the county policy, you can start your own private practice, you can be a therapist. There's so many things you can do with a master's in social work. You can work for nonprofits. So because of that, I kind of just want to get that MSW. So I just can kind of hop around from everywhere. I want to work in child welfare for a little bit, but I also want to, a more long-term goal, like I want to have a retreat for Black women, like healing retreats for Black women. There's some of them that are like online, and shout out to them. I really want to work for, like, I would love to work for one. Things like that. I just want to be a part of helping our community heal. I think 2020 was a very great year for me to realize there is so much trauma that lives within here, just from being Black. And not enough people are talking about it or aware of it. A lot of families are suffering because of it. So that's definitely something that I want to be a part of, something I want to help with. Yeah.
Nice. Those are sounding like good goals, very attainable goals, because I just know you. So like that's all stuff that I can definitely see you doing. But thinking about like these associated traumas, by being Black, the water. So I know you got a theory about that. So can you talk to us a little bit of like your kind of like Black people and the trauma that we hold in regards to the water? Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah. So it's interesting to look and to talk about it because Black people were some of the first people on Earth, period. So we're also not only the first on Earth, but the first to interact with the ocean, and the first to be one with the ocean. Some of the first fishermen, some of the first surfers, things like that. So the water has always kind of been with us through our entire existence. And we used to have a really good relationship with the water and be able to do really great things through the water, for our own civilizations and our own cultures and families and things like that. In terms of Africa as a continent and culturally, the water was very, and still is very, very significant for African culture and just sustaining yourself, as an African person. Yeah. And, we had that connection so deeply and so strongly until, the water was used against us in another way. Instead of it being helpful to us, it was very detrimental to us, where our ancestors were being put on ships and sold into years and years and years of being enslaved, generations of being enslaved, and people choosing the water over bondage. And that just creates a huge rift within the Black community. Like, dang, the last time we was in the water, it didn't go that well for us, especially for African Americans specifically. Like, the reason why we were here is because of trauma and terror and terrorism that happened to us on the water. Right. So it's kind of crazy, like how we talk about that generational trauma. We hold that within ourselves. We teach that to our children. They teach that to their children. We have this kind of known fear to the water. No, we don't mess with that. Oh, I'm not that. The ocean, I'm not going to go swimming in no ocean, things like that. Like, that's where we come from with it, because we taught that generationally. And it's really sad because our ancestors, like I said, are in the ocean and are a part of the ocean and had a great relationship with the ocean. So there's some sort of disconnect that happens when we let or not when we let, but when we had the ocean taken away from us spiritually. So because there's that fraction, there's kind of like this unhealed trauma that just kind of sits there, and prevents a lot of people from engaging in Black people engaging in like water sports and going to the beach and just beautiful things like that. When the ocean is alone is so healing, we're deprived of it because we're scared of it because of the things that happen to us. And I think a big step for the Black community is to learn how to swim. If you don't know how to swim, go a little bit deeper in the ocean, see what happens. Like, but don't stop at your ankles, go all the way up to your knees. Like maybe even go underwater if a wave's coming. Learn how to swim first. But
please.
But go underwater if a wave's coming, just because, that's what our ancestors were doing. And us being able to do that now is revolutionary. We should take advantage of that. Definitely flip the scripts and kind of take back that power. Definitely.
Yeah. No, that's real.
Yeah.
So I like for you to expand on that, because I remember over break you talking about cousin that he was like, dang, like, had to really rethinking. So I just thought that was a good transition too, just for what we were talking about. But so earlier we kind of talked about this trend that was happening on TikTok where people would basically it's on Black TikTok, but like where people will be like but where people would be like I, as a Black person, I'm not afraid to admit XYZ, right? But I've been basically seeing it as like another, wedge creating, Black division on TikTok, as it tends to do. And the crazy thing is, like, it's around the time where like they talking about like banning it. I feel like that's when TikTok get like the most active. I feel like that's when they start pushing the most buttons like on the back end, just be like, we're just gonna stir some shit up, you know what I mean? So we're talking about that one. But a big thing that like I've kind of recognized in that trend though is like a lot of Black people's trauma or different experiences with other Black people. So like, I don't know, thinking about how some people like want to distance themselves from the Black community because commonly you hear like, oh, I got like made fun of or something like that. Kind of thinking about like how that translates to like our group dynamics and how we view each other, just as like a community. Can you kind of talk to like how, from a psychological standpoint, that works, where people are just like harboring trauma towards a group of people that are the same race as them, and you're kind of creating this in-group behavior?
Yeah, so a major power tactic is turning a community against each other. Because if we tear down each other, then we do the work of the oppressor.
Right.
And I definitely think that has been used on the Black community like so much. That method, that power tactic has been used on us a lot, and not just us, but in terms of this experience that we know can speak of, it's occurred. And I feel like it's kind of happening with TikTok, and I think that just goes to show that Black people don't have a safe place. We don't have a place really where we can collectively have this conversation and have a family meeting in the living room and talk about this privately and not in front of all these white people and all these other people to see. And I think because if we're online and blasting the things, like we have no other place to have this conversation. So like I think these conversations are important, like the one that we just kind of talked about earlier, about how Black Americans, African Americans have kind of distanced themselves from African people. That's an important conversation that as a diaspora should be having.
Right.
But the issue is we have it in public and we get the energy of people who ain't got shit to do with that. So I think that's definitely causes division, and because we have everybody watching us at the same time, we're not really able to kind of come to a consensus and have a conversation about it because we know they're watching. So it's like, okay, either we don't want to have a conversation about it, or because we have this double consciousness of saying like, okay, if they see us saying this, then like it looks bad on us, so we can't have this conversation, or I'm going to try and shut down your opinion because they can't see us arguing like this. Is kind of how a lot of people are acting on TikTok and in the comments. So no, I think it's interesting. Yeah. I just think like TikTok or social media in general has like a very interesting dynamic for Black people, because like you said, like the whole double consciousness, like you have to not only view yourself, but like then you got to view yourself like how you're being viewed from other people, and like you're very much so blasted in front of like the whole country or the whole like whoever uses the platform. So and people take that personally. Like in the one I just showed you, there were some Black people in the comments saying, "How dare you say they took that like she was speaking specifically to them. This was just an idea, an opinion that she had, and instead of being like, actually, this is more so my experience. It couldn't really do that because one, this unprocessed trauma, and then two, we're not really allowed to have those conversations, and have never not allowed to have those conversations within our household, and definitely not allowed to have those conversations in front of these white people. So it's kind of like a disconnect there, where it's like we can't really have a conversation about it because we're not in a safe place too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's like no, and that's crazy to me that there's like no like major social media just like area where that can happen. Because like you think about like the things that really be keeping social media alive, be black people.
Black people.
Like
Black
even
creators.
even from like I'm not even talking like all the sports highlights and like stuff surrounding celebrities and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like that's the biggest chunk, obviously. But even like down to like the small stuff, like back when we had like Vine or
Mhm.
just like smaller like the short form, just like
Yeah.
small entertainment. Like
King Bach was everywhere.
it's always just been held up by like black
Black
people.
people.
So it's like
Yeah.
that we can't even have like a civilized like conversation because like people just be like mad at each other all the time and like in this I don't know. I feel like unproductive mindset because of where you're having it, the people that might be able to see it, it's like a real slap to the face. Especially because it's just like social media got everybody in a headlock, regardless of race. So like that's just like more salt on the wound. I feel like, but can you kind of talk to some of like because since we're like Gen Z, like the social media era, can you kind of talk about like how our psychological development is different from just being like social media savvy than other generations?
Oh yeah, I think we're definitely a lot more overstimulated in general. I feel like in terms of our focus it's not there. We struggle with focusing, like actually, which is okay to admit. But we also get a lot of stuff done at once, like you know what I mean, like listening to music, getting homework done, and also watching a TV show at the same time type thing. So we get a lot of stuff done. So that is one like up to it. But in terms of being like tech savvy and having social media, we have literally the entire world in our fingertips. The entire world at our hands. We can look up anything, learn about anything at any moment, see things that are not being manipulated and misconstrued by the media. Like we have a truly probably the most honest worldview than any previous generation. Even if you think about like how Gen Z gets their news in comparison to like how our parents and grandparents get their news. Like my Gigi constantly watches CNN. My mom usually watches the evening news. I don't even watch the news. I get my news and information from Apple News, from Instagram, from TikTok, from Googling events,
Right.
like things like that. Like that's how I get it in a completely different way. I get my little digest at the end of the day from Apple News. I read a little bit. I do some extra research just because I have that at my fingertips. It's just stuff like that. Like I can fact check my stuff immediately.
Yeah.
So because of that, like Gen Z is so much more tech savvy. We're so good at getting accurate information, even though with celebrities we kind of not really good with that. But in terms of world events, I feel like we are really good at getting accurate information, which is a good thing, but also a dangerous thing because we're exposing ourselves to a lot more trauma. So yeah, that's kind of it's very complex, our relationship with social media and how that's impacting us. Yeah.
I don't know, I definitely felt the focus because I don't know, man. Like it'd be hard sometimes. But I heard that like just like reading a little bit will like increase your attention span. It's like easier to just like visualize and kind of like put all your attention on the one thing because your brain just got to constantly be like, what am I looking at? So I think it's a good thing, start read some more, that's the message.
My mom's a librarian, so she's gonna love that one.
Yeah, read some more, please.
Yeah, but even with that, like if you think about it, like we have to go out of our way to actually stop the noise and read.
Yeah. No, I feel like it's way harder to
it's so hard to
read just like a casual book.
To think like, that's like what previous generations did all the time. Like we just got on we're boyfriend girlfriend, by the way, if that's not clear. But we got on an Amtrak train down to LA, and it's like to think back in the day, people were just reading and looking out the window. Yeah. We was listening to music,
watching TV.
We was watching TV.
Yeah.
Like we was doing all types of stuff. We was getting work done. Like I had a whole meeting with my group for a group project on the train. Like just
I would have been big bored.
Right.
I would have been big bored.
But would you, if the only thing is just sitting there reading and looking out the window?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you would always dread it though. Like, okay, man, I gotta travel. You know what I mean? Like, but I don't know. I'd rather be on like an Amtrak though than have to, be on like the motherfucking Pony Express. Like I'd be hella mad if I had to go across country and get somebody some mail. And what type of mail? This is just a question, but like, what type of mail was they really delivering to where it could be delivered that late? You know what I mean? Like
no, like because
that's just a question.
I love watching historical shows, and one of the shows, this is not a good show at all. And I'm not going to say the name of the show so I don't get sued, but it's actually a really bad show, and it's just so culturally unaware, so racially wrong. Like it's just a bad show, but I loved it. And what happened a lot in the show is people would find out like their family member died like 3 months.
Nah, that's sick, man. This the whole funeral.
Like crazy. One of the main characters found out like her husband died like a whole like week later.
Nah, sick work,
because they had to travel on their horses to get back to her to give her the. No, it must have been sick back in the day. So that's the great things about technology. You get important information a lot faster.
Oh yeah, definitely. But kind of coming down to the home stretch, Zayna,
Yes.
I would like to say thank you for coming on to the show today.
Okay.
You are the first woman to be on an episode of Truth to Power in video form. So it's Women's History Month.
Making history.
You're a woman making history.
Oh.
Yeah,
Come in for two different things. Let's try that again.
there you go. But yeah, you making history. So I just want to say I appreciate you. You know, taking time out of your not busy Sunday. I know what you were doing earlier. Yeah, but I appreciate you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
With that being said, that was yet another episode of Truth to Power. Thanks for watching.